Good afternoon, good evening, and wherever you're listening, whatever time you're picking this up at, and welcome to the League of Ireland Women's podcast here on finalwhistle.ie with myself, Breifne, Earley, and of course, once again, the ever-dashing Aaron Clarke. Aaron, welcome to another week of women's soccer.
Welcome. It's a lovely day out. It's a lovely day out. Everything's positive. Everything's good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're recording this Thursday lunchtime, a little bit late this week due to a little bout of illness, but we're back up and running now, and we're going to be joined later on by Athlone forward Dana Scheriff from her 2-goal salvo in their win in Wexford at the weekend. We'll be talking to her in just a couple of moments. But Aaron, for you, plenty of interesting results over the weekend. Galway almost pulled off the shock possibly of the season so far. I think 6 or 8 weeks ago, nobody would have given them a chance against Shamrock Rovers, and really they can feel disappointed to have lost to, or not lost, but it feels like a loss given the way it happened. A goal towards the end of the game from Jamie Thompson equalised for Shamrock Rovers. But for you, your pick of the games of the weekend, what do you think?
Probably Athlone's performance against Wexford for me. We spoke last week about Athlone probably needing a result. If they didn't get a result, it was a case of what happens next, and they go out and they get that sort of result live on television. I think for me that was probably one of them. Yes, the Galway result, but Galway are in good form. That's the only thing you'd say is the fact that, like, yes, it's a draw against Shamrock Rovers, but they'd beaten Shelbourne previously, beaten Athlone before the break as well, and then they go in and do that. So I wasn't surprised to see them putting it up to Shamrock Rovers, but for me probably that, and then Treaty defending superbly against and frustrating Shelbourne. But a lot of some close games, some not so close games. DLR maybe getting a little bit away from the bottom two as well. A lot of teams are looking up, but some are looking over their shoulder a little bit after the last couple of weeks' results.
But is it not great now that rather than having 2 or 3 teams that can compete for a title, we now seem to have 7 or 8 teams that I know there's 2 or 3 that are probably a little bit ahead of the others, but there's 7 or 8 teams that on their day could beat anyone in the league.
Yeah, like it's funny if you look at the fixtures this year. Wexford beat Galway in the opening day of the season. Galway lose the Bows. Galway beat Shells. Galway draw with Rovers. Like it's just a mad result, and then they get a last minute winner against Cork and Turner's Cross. Then you look at the likes of Athlone winning the President's Cup. They have a bit of a slow start, but then they come out and score 3 goals and blitz Wexford in the game live on television. Like, yeah, you're right. Everybody's capable of doing that. There is still a gap between the bottom, unfortunately, and it's probably separating a little bit more. But the top 7, yeah, they're all capable of beating anybody on their day, which is great.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree with you anymore. But I suppose that game down in Wexford is the one that we'll start with, because all the talk in the build-up to it was the new striking options that were on Wexford's team. Former Athlone player, of course, Emily Corbett and Rihanna Jarrett back from the UK, but it was the striking options on the opposite side of Athlone, or for the Athlone team, that took all the plaudits at the end. A 3-1 win in the end. Early goal from Myrne Devaney, 2 minutes on the clock, while Rihanna Jarrett did get on the score sheet after just over a quarter of an hour. But it was the last half hour of the game where things really came to light, and it was the introduction of one of their American players, and I suppose it's a good opportunity for us to introduce her on the show as well. A nice little intro there for Dana Scheriff. Have I got that right, Dana, by the way, first of all?
It's Sheriff. It actually
Sheriff,
is like
okay.
Sheriff, yeah.
Okay, I was adding a whole exotic flair to it there. But you're very, very welcome to the programme. Welcome to Ireland as well, even though you've been here a while. We've seen very little of you in the league, unfortunately. But I suppose, first of all, how are things for you now? I know you spent a bit of time injured.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't ask for it to be any better right now. I'm back playing, training full-time, and I'm just enjoying every single second of it, opposed to last year, obviously, where I spent most of my time on the sideline watching. But yeah, I feel great.
Before we really get into the injury, though, the fact that 2 goals of the weekend got your side a massive 3 points against a big rival in Wexford Youths down in Clarke Park, stuff of dreams live on telly.
Yeah, it was nice. It was especially exciting for me coming off the bench, and I think I only played about 26 minutes, and the first goal was kind of just like, I didn't even know what happened, and then I finally got settled into the match, and I just felt comfortable and confident, which I haven't in so long. And then I guess I did my thing towards the end, but it was a great win. It was great that it was televised, and we all just had fun with it.
I'm not quite sure what happened. The first one was a rocket of a header from a corner, by the way, in case you missed it. The second one, though, almost an injury time, last couple of minutes of the game. You're 2-1 up, reasonably comfortable. you jump on a loose ball and you just kind of ran ragged and you had them all over the place. How fun was that, first of all, just to be able to kind of, I can't even describe it, but slalom through a couple of defenders and then just stick in the bottom corner.
No, it was great. Like I haven't felt so good in so long with my injury and stuff, and just to be able to finally be like, I feel comfortable with the football at my feet, and I love what I'm doing right now. Is all I could ask for. There was like, I think I had the ball for too long, and in my head I was like, all right, you got to do something with it. So that's when I just decided to strike it. But yeah, it was fun. Like that's all I really want out of it, and it was just a great time for me.
You're watching on from the sideline. Game is 1-1 in the balance. Tommy gives you the nod, says, "Dana, you're coming on." What are you thinking in that moment?
I to be honest, like not much besides get out there and do your job, like, and just enjoy it. Like I just want to enjoy every second I have on the pitch because I'm still coming back, so I'm only getting a certain amount of minutes. So I knew I needed to do something. So it was really just enjoy it and make an impact.
Of course, we mentioned Emily Corbett at the start of the show. Would have been in the dressing room with you this time last year. Now in the opposite dressing room. Was that a consideration in the build-up to the game? Was it mentioned at all in the dressing room?
I mean, we mentioned, Tommy mentioned all of the players. Of course, Emily's name came up. She's a great player. I actually saw her before the match, and it was nice. We said hello and wished each other luck, and that was really all. But like Emily's such a good player. I'd love for her to be in our locker room, and it's just nice to see her. And yeah, that's about it.
For you though, you talk about restricted minutes and stuff like that. How long do you think it's going to take before you maybe get back to your best if you're back on full throttle where you're contending for starts week in, week out?
Yeah, I mean, if I want to be starting next week. I want to be starting as soon as possible. But it really is about managing my rehab and my injury, and like just taking it match by match. And I'm just trusting my managers and the physios and what they know what they're doing. So I just take what they say and follow, and hopefully I could just keep performing the way I am. So where eventually I'm at the point where I can get 90 minutes or just even get in the starting lineup.
Start of the season, of course, the President's Cup. I know you weren't directly involved in it, but you would have been floating around. Now we're looking at played 5 games, kind of a 50% record, 2 wins, a draw, and 2 defeats. Are you happy with how the season has gone so far?
I think I wish we would have pushed on a little bit more coming off of the President's Cup. I mean, obviously there was so much momentum in the town, and we had so much pride and confidence, and then like it kind of just we didn't really stay with that. So I would have wished we could have pushed on with that more. But I think this win last weekend really, really helped the feelings and the emotions in the locker room and just boost everyone back up to where we need to be. So I think we're headed in the right direction now.
A short season as well this year, though. There's only 20 games, and every game means as much. I think it's fair to say, with the fact that you're seeing bar P-Mount 2 have won 5 of their 6 games, everybody else is taking points off each other regularly as well. Does that really show that it's so competitive that you can afford the slow start?
Yeah, and like I find that so much more interesting, and the fact that, like you said, games can go either which way, and that just makes it more competitive, which makes, at the end of the day, makes the league so much more better, and more people want to watch, and I just want to keep playing. So like getting a slow start, I'm not too concerned about it, because like you said, anything can happen on any day.
We mentioned in the intro that you're from the States. Obviously, the accent gives that away as well. But how does a girl from Long Island, New York, end up in Athlone? Where does that decision happen? Because it's usually the opposite way around for most Irish people. So can you shed a bit of light on how you end up in the Midlands of Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, it's for sure been a journey, but I started off in 2020. I went to England to get my master's degree, and I didn't really have an intent of playing like on the professional level. I just wanted to play for the university team, but then COVID happened, so I had to do something because I was in England just doing nothing. And I met some of the girls that played for Durham, told me to come try out, and I did. And I just figured, wow, like these girls are doing this for a living, like I can do that too. So then they all had connections in Iceland. I ended up playing there, got an agent, and then he said, hey, are you interested in going to play in Ireland at Athlone? And I was like, what's Athlone? But I'm glad I asked that question, because now I'm here almost 2 years and I've enjoyed every second of it.
It's funny though, like even just on the Durham relationship, because when you'd have left, a couple of the Irish would have then went over. You Nisha McAloon and Saoirse Noonan not long after you. But like, talk about like being in the Midlands and things like that. Like with playing football, being so far away from home, like how do you occupy your days outside of football, or like what how do you keep busy, especially considering it's a small town and from someone from America, it must be completely different.
Yeah, no, I mean, so it was a bit different for me last year. Obviously, I was out for injury, so I was working at a little cafe, and that really helped me out because I became really a part of the community. Like I had my regulars, I knew people around town, and it was just awesome to be able to do something a part of football. But now this year, I have more of a focus on my training and stuff, and it's just really managing when you train and then the little time you have throughout each training session. You could just literally, the cliches, go for a walk, read a book, pick up some hobbies. But I mean, it's all I've ever wanted to do is just be able to play football. So I can't complain.
Of course, growing up, you were maybe an hour and a bit outside of. I've done a bit of research. An hour and a bit outside of Manhattan.
Yeah.
You're a bit further from kind of that type of hustle and bustle in Athlone. So, like, how does life compare from growing up in New York State versus the Midlands at the moment?
I think the best way I could put it is I enjoy this lifestyle much better. I like when I came to England, I felt so relaxed. And then the whole just way about the life, like even here, it's just in New York, it's everything's fast paced, this, that, do, blah, blah. And like I just enjoy my time. So being in Ireland and relaxing a bit, I would much prefer it, you know. Especially like you said, growing up going to Manhattan every weekend. It's a bit repetitive and it's draining. Like it is one of the best cities in the world, but it is draining. So I enjoy this kind of lifestyle.
Crowds are on the up for Athlone. You talked about a little bit about working last year in a local cafe. Do you get stopped much in town where people want to talk about Athlone and talk about the football?
Yeah, and so much more this year already, because like last year it was just starting to become uproar and people were copping on, but this year especially, like you'll just be walking around town and you'll have like your Athlone gear on and they'll just scream at you like up the town, and you're like, who just said that? And it's just a random person walking by, or you have like these little kids who just come up to you, and it's actually one of the most special things I've experienced so far, because I've never had that kind of fan base. And like it's cool that it's a small town because everyone's invested in everything, and it's nice to be a part of.
You're picking up some of the lingo as well. I heard the words copped on it there as well.
I say grand a lot too, and my friends from home are like, what are you saying?
You're practically alone at this stage. In terms of, I suppose, the reality of the day-to-day life, though, you talk about focusing on football. The league has gone professional this year. Has that had an impact on you? Is that kind of part why you're able to maybe, and I say professional in inverted commas, the ability is there to earn a few euros to play. How has that affected your time in the club?
Yeah, like I said, last year I picked up a job because I had not enough time, and also probably the extra cash was nice. And now this year I'm able to just focus on my football, and which is huge for me, especially with my recovery and like wanting to be able to do and come back, do everything correctly. And it gives me some extra like leeway room to just be able to focus on the things I want to.
You talk about, focusing on football. It's evident though that your drive to be successful. So what would you say though would be success at Athlone Town?
Doing the double. That would be nice. Doing the double. But it just even like, I think success is everywhere. Like even just seeing more people come to our matches, like that's success for me. Seeing like the way the club is transforming and investing more into the women's side of the program, like that's success to me. So it's just everything. I think the Athlone Town as a club is just, ever since I've been here, I've seen it keep going up and higher, and it's just, I like where it's going. So it's all part of it.
Yeah, Athlone is one of those clubs, I suppose I wouldn't say struggle is the right word, but they've been in that mid to lower range of the second tier in Irish football for a while on the men's side. but they've really come on leaps and bounds in the last 18 months on the women's side. And is it because of the club are really putting that investment in, whether it's human resources or financial resources into the ladies, the women's side of the house? Can you see that from on the ground in terms of the input?
For sure, because when I was the first international to sign with this club, and so I really have been here from the start of when they started investing into the women's side of things. And like I've watched it go from where it was from when I first signed with the club, like last January to now. And it's just, even with like the girls are copping on. Like when I first got here, there's not much hope in the locker room. And like now every single one of us are in there and we're like, oh, we can do this. Like it's just everything, the environment, everything surrounding it. It's just more belief than there was when I first got here, and it just keeps growing.
What do you put that down to, that belief, that change in attitude in the dressing room, locker room, whatever you want to call it?
Locker room. Yeah, no, I think it's just something needed to be said. Like when I first came in, I just walked in and I like told everyone exactly how I thought, like that we could win the league. And most of the girls were just looking at me with like blank faces. And then even from management, like we all have each other's back. With Laurie as the captain, she had my back, I have her back, and it's really just reinforcing those thoughts. And like until the girls are able to see, like, wow, this is doable. So
it's interesting what you say there, though. Like the one thing for me, well, last year was we even start talking as the season kept going. Can Athlone do this? Will Athlone do this? Because the more and more people wrote you off, the more and more it sort of drove you on even further.
Yeah. That's for sure.
In terms of your contribution, obviously you were injured from most of last season, and you got to watch that progress from a little remove on the sideline. How did you stay involved through that injury, or did you stay involved?
Yeah, no, I did. I mean, I was offered the chance to go home and do all of my rehab at home in New York and just come back if I wanted to after. And I didn't want to. I wanted to be a part of the team because I knew we had something special going. And like I said, well, I don't think I mentioned, but one of my best friends from home, Maddie, she signed with the club and I wanted to be there. I wanted to be part of all of this. So I was there. I was at every training session. I was at every single match, even though I wasn't playing on the pitch. Like I tried to participate as much as possible in the locker room, doing the things I had to do because I wanted to be there. I could have easily just went home and just got better over there, but I stayed in Ireland for my team, for the club. And I wouldn't have changed that decision because I think that's also why I'm still here now, because I watched this all happen firsthand. And now I'm like, wow, I need to be a part of this now, you know?
Well, you got the girls into it that you had to stick around to support them after that. You're the first international. So there's a joke Tommy Tiernan, an Irish comedian, tells about how Irish come in and infest a place, and one person rents a room, and all of a sudden there's 17 people living in it in another couple of weeks. Does it feel like that in the dressing room at the moment? Where, sorry, I'm going to say locker room out of respect for your Americanisms. Does it feel like that in the locker room now, where you've got this kind of core of international players coming in who add that kind of maybe that ruthlessness at times in terms of how they approach the sport and how they kind of focus on winning, not necessarily at all costs, but winning as the priority of what the objective is for the week?
Yeah, it's a very true point, because I think it was what was needed. Like we have all these girls with this experience who played all over the world and who are used to playing in high like cup finals and doing all these things. And it was just, you needed those people to be there and just say, hey, we've done this through experience. Like this is why we're here. We're going to push on. And then the Irish girls have been great. Like they have all invested in everything. Like we really are one big unit. And I think just the initial push of bringing in international players kind of awoken everyone around the club, where it's like, oh, hey, like we're good enough to do this. Like who wouldn't want to be a part of it? Do you know?
We just want to revert back there slightly, because it was sort of glossed over when you mentioned Maddie Gibson. How did the conversation about Bodie's coming to Athlone come about? Like you say, you were the first one to sign. Did you convince Maddie, or how did that come about?
Yeah. So it's funny because I got injured, and me and her played in college together for 4 years, and we were very similar players. We both played on the wing. And I was kind of like, I knew she was in Lithuania looking for a new club, and I was like, do you want to come play in Ireland with me? And she was like, yeah, like, that's awesome. And I was like, oh, but just, like, I got injured, but I don't know if like how bad it is yet, but you should come over and play. And she's like, yeah, of course. So I brought her over kind of to like replace me in a way for the season, since I knew I wasn't going to really be playing. And luckily she loves it. And I get to play with her this year, which is really, really cool considering that I played with her in the past. But yeah, I just called her up. I was like, you want to come play in Ireland with me? And that's how that happened.
Have you got your agent's lessons yet?
I should, right? Like, I say that all the time. I'm like, I should really become an agent.
Listen, that's how many an agent has started. Just those casual phone calls all of a sudden becomes a little business for yourself. In terms of, I suppose, living arrangements, do you all, because I know from up here in Sligo where the men all live in the same kind of area and they tend to kind of pal around together, do you have a whole like social network away from the club as well that you all kind of hang out together?
Yeah, it's really fun. I live in a house with Maddie, and then there's a few other international girls who live in a house, but we're all right in town. And then all the men's players who are internationals have their own little houses in town. And it's this cute little thing. We call ourselves the United Nations, because we're like this little group of internationals who just like walk around Athlone, and like I'm sure everyone knows who we are because everyone looks different. And it's just, that's our little gang, and we do everything, walks, weekends. It's nice.
Have you got to see much of the country or get away from Athlone, out to local sightseeing or anything like that? Obviously, you're traveling with the team, but I mean, kind of independently from that, do you get an opportunity to do that?
Yeah, I love Galway. I've been there a few times. Been to Dublin. Haven't been anywhere south really, but I'm getting on that this year. Going to go down to Cork. That's really it.
We want to fill thrill here. You're talking about having what you like Galway. You could be getting poached.
No. I like the water. I like being by the water. It's a cute little town.
In terms of when you're talking about that, like it must be different because you see the way the Irish they do the likes of St. Patrick's Day in America and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
What's it like to experience it from an Irish side?
So it was funny because I'm from New York, and we have this huge St. Patrick's Day parade in New York City, and it's unreal. And so like I've experienced that like a lot of years. And so this year I was so excited because I was like, let's go check out the Dublin parade like for the day. And like it was fun, it was nice and all, but I was like, this is so small scale compared to what we do in the US. I'm like, why do we celebrate it like that in the US?
Well, it's the US people that celebrate it here as well, to be fair.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's in Dublin, and everyone was from the US. I'm like, what is the point of this?
Wait until you see one down the country. They're an awful lot smaller down the country.
Yeah, there's one village beside us specialised in the most bizarre parades ever. One year they had the Invisible Parade, which was literally empty road and an MC describing what was not there in front of people. And there's been the backwards parade. There's been the world's smallest parade. But they get on the news every year, so they're happy out. Listen, in terms of the season ahead, obviously, you must have ambitions for the year. What's the plan? Obviously, you talk about winning the league, but I suppose what are the steps towards that? What are the steps towards maybe getting some silverware at the end of the season, like you started it with the President's Cup?
Yeah, we just need to stay focused, take it match by match, have a game plan every match, because again, it's such a competitive league. Like you can't outright anybody. So just really focusing on the specific match coming up on the weekend and dealing with that as it comes. You don't want to get too ahead of yourself. So I'd really say just focus on every match that comes, and then keeping myself like personally just in top tier fitness shape, sharp, however I can, that I can contribute to my team to try to do as much as possible to get that silverware.
Well, listen, we'll leave it there. Dana, thanks so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you in the league and to be hopefully watching more of you as the season progresses and you come back in 100% manner from the injury. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Dana.
Dana Scheriff, almost added the flair to her name there as well. Dana Scheriff there from Athlone. Breath of fresh air really into the league, kind of seeing these international players. I know we've got a few in Shells, we have a few in Treaty. There's a few dotted around the league over the last few seasons. We can all think of a couple of examples in terms of whether it's Kristen Sample at Cork or Sligo, or the name escapes me now, the girl that was in Emma Starr for Galway last year, spent a bit of time with Shells. But we've seen these players come in, but they do add that little bit of kind of interest to the league and intrigue to the league in terms of attracting these players in. Your thoughts on her?
Do you know, I think the biggest thing I'll take away from that, even just speaking there, is a personality and how much she's enjoying life, how much she's loving things. And I think for me, that's half the battle. And if you're enjoying life in a city like that, you're going to want to commit. You're going to want to actually put your best foot forward. And you can see how much it's like she nearly lives and breathes Athlone, what Athlone do, which is great. And you're right, they add so much, like Jamie Erickson and Galway for the last couple of years as well. Like it's great, and long may it last, because players like that coming in, when she says the first thing she done is walked in the dressing room, we come in the league. Whoever does that, walking into the likes of an Athlone dressing room, initially that probably gave them so much, oh, somebody's thinking like that. Like, and look how close they came. The only disappointing thing I will say about Dana is the fact that she got injured last year. Yeah. I'd have loved to see what she'd have done with a fully fit season and how much of an impact she'd had on that Athlone team.
I think we might see later this season exactly what she brings to the table over the next 6 or 8 months or so. In terms of the actual weekend, last weekend, we've talked at length now about that game at the weekend. Let's wrap it up. Wexford, would you be worried if you were Wexford now in terms of the responses? I know they've only played 4 games, they've 2 games in hand, and most teams above them. But is it a bit of a poor start to the season?
Yes, it's a slippery slope. That's the biggest thing, and we'll probably preview the fixture they have this weekend later on. But like, you look at the game that they have, and it's sort of, you're going straight into it, sort of thinking, oh no, it's another massive, massive game. If they don't get something from that game, they're potentially going to drop even further, because an Athlone win, Athlone goes, it looks like Athlone win the weekend, and you're sort of thinking, what's going on? But the biggest problem for Wexford is sort of being, they had a gap to the Rovers game. They had a gap then they played Athlone again. They just haven't really been able to get going. A lot of changes, people playing in different sort of positions as well. It's a difficult one, and unless they get a massive bounce back this weekend, it'll be a really, really bad start to the season for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look at some of the other games. Shells, of course, you were at that game. Shells won 3-0. On the face of it, good result for a Treaty team that's been struggling this season. To be within one of the league champions, I think they'd have taken it, even though it's a defeat, they'd probably have taken it coming up the road.
Defensively, they were very good. They were very, very good again defensively. They sort of kept Shelbourne to a lot of, how would you say, not necessarily shots from distance, whipping balls into the box, and then they were closing them down. They just looked so organised. The goal that they conceded, Anne-Marie Ulecken goal, would be disappointed with it. Like, if she catches that, or she takes that cleanly, then Noelle Murray doesn't score from close range, and you're always on the back foot. Even when that happens, you're sort of thinking 13 minutes in, this could be 5, 6, 7. But credit to them, they defended very well. 3 or 4 young players on the team as well. And I think from a Treaty point of view, they'd have to be really happy with that performance. Shelbourne, they'll be frustrated, but the biggest thing from a Shelbourne point of view is, yes, they didn't play superbly. Treaty didn't allow them at times, and they didn't get firing full of cylinders. But it's 3 points on the board. It doesn't matter how you get them. Bowes walked away from a 1-0 win against Treaty on the opening day of the season, and now that win looks a little bit better. And like, it's a win at the end of the day for Shells, and that's what Noel King will have to tell us players, that it's a win from Athlone. Yes, it's from a Treaty. Yes, it's another positive, backing up the fact that they got the win and then the draw before the break. But realistically, for Treaty, it's all well and good going out and losing 1-0 to Shelbourne, if they don't come out and put on some better performance in a team who are in and around them this weekend in DLR.
Can we read much into the actual result, given it's the league champions, and with all due respect, the last place team in the league table last season, and it was only 1 goal between them. Mind you, Shells did miss a penalty late on and had chances.
Hit the crossbar as well. Cavan also hit the crossbar with a free kick as well. Like, Shells had chances, yes. Like, realistically, I don't think you can read an awful lot into. Yes, you got to give Treaty credit, but you can't read an awful lot into where Shells are at, because like, really, they've just come off an international break as well, which is always difficult. Players are away, or the underage players are away as well as the senior players, and fitting in sort of thing. So it's difficult to read. It's difficult to read into it. Treaty will take the positive. Shells will be disappointed, but Shells, again, they're off this weekend, so they'll have another week to let that 1-0 win sort of stir if they're not happy with the performance, which maybe isn't a good thing.
Peamount still top of the table. They had a good win down in Cork, 2-1, 2 goals from Kate Mooney. She goes to the top of the goal scorers chart in the league, and they find a little bit of form. I know they had a bit of a blip last week against Shells, but now they're kind of coming back into themselves a little bit.
I think it was an important response from Peamount, because the Shells game, there's no doubt hit them for 6, because the fact that 1-0 up and looked comfortable enough, and then second half things fall apart, and you started thinking, okay, we need to see a response from Peamount. Like, don't get me wrong, people are probably saying, oh, they only scored 2 goals against Cork, but like, it's a win. It's a Kate Mooney 2 goals. It's a win. Yes, they'll probably be disappointed with the fact that they conceded a goal, but it was, as you say, it was a good strike from Lauren Walsh. There's something, I think a lot of people are probably talking about this game more for what's happened off the field than on the field, with the tweet that went around social media. I don't know if you've seen it, from John Breen, who brought his daughter. I think she has autism, brought her down to Cork and got the train down, and Peamount let them get the team bus back to Dublin. And I think a lot of people are talking about the good in Peamount, and the results sort of gone a little bit under the radar. But it was a good win for them. Keeps them top of the table. They continue to roll on.
Absolutely, but they'll be happy top of the table still after 6 games. Of course, it's a few teams with those games in hand, so that could change as we go along the league over the next couple of weeks. Let's talk Galway United. They've been really the success story. They've been this year's Athlone story in terms of maybe the expectations at the start of the season wouldn't have been huge. Lost a lot of the more experienced players from the Galway WRC days that didn't come with the change to Galway United. New manager, a couple of new players, but 1 or 2 hiccups early on, a couple of very low score 1-0 wins and defeats in the first couple of games of the season. But they've kind of come into it and almost took all 3 points against Shamrock Rovers the weekend.
Do I need to eat some humble pie? Because of what I said about Galway at the start of the season, when I said they were going to be, I didn't think they were going to be a good side. They've been very good the last couple of weeks. The result against Shells, and then to back it up against Athlone and come out to get a point against Rovers. They're probably more disappointed with the fact they conceded late on, but that's testament to Rovers, because Rovers kept pushing against Sligo Rovers for the winner as well. And even in the second half against Wexford, when Wexford equalised, they pushed on and kept going and going and going, looking for that goal. I think that's a good characteristic from the Rovers side, that they're continuing to drive on. Gemma McGuinness obviously getting the goal for Galway. A perfect start to go ahead so early on, and you're thinking from a Galway point of view, lovely, but it was good character shown by Rovers. I think realistically, Phil Trill probably have to be happy to take a point out of that game. Yes, if you offer them at the start, he'd have taken it, but conceding late on, they'd probably be disappointed. But it was one of them that it was always going to be a difficult task for him, but it was a good point for Galway.
Nice finish. You mentioned the shot from Lauren Walsh earlier for the Cork City goal, but Gemma McGuinness's volley as well. A good piece of opportunism when the ball kind of dropped to her in the box.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Gemma's a key player in the sense that she knows when to be in the right places at times. And I think that was, we probably thought last year with Sligo, like Sligo losing was a big loss for them, but for Galway, she's starting to pop in a more. Yes, she'd be disappointed to be sent off in the game against Shells, but she shows, she has a bit of quality about her. And I think from them, they're just coming along nicely, Galway. And if they can pick up another couple of results, maybe we're going to have to talk about them a little bit differently. But I do think they're nearly coming in to be the Athlone of last year. But are they still a little bit behind where Athlone were last year? Probably the shorter season doesn't help. But you're right in what you said earlier, though. They've either at the start of the season they were either winning games 1-0 or losing 1-0, and now they're getting a few more goals as well in other games, which is good as well. Yeah,
and I've been impressed with Galway, I have to say, and the more than that, humble pie, by the way, it tastes fairly nice when you get used to it. You get fairly used to it in this game, but I think for me, Galway are the story of the season so far. They might not turn out to be league title contenders, but I think we had them in the bottom half of the table. And I can see them, if things stay the way they're going, they could be comfortable top half of the table, maybe even challenging for some of those top spots over the coming weeks. One other team who maybe need to kind of push on from the potential they've shown in recent seasons is DLR. They had a fairly straightforward victory over Sligo at the weekend. Your thoughts on their victory over the Bitter Red?
Yeah, it was comfortable enough victory. The Sarah McCabe goal was a superb strike. But like we spoke last week about this being a game where DLR will show us, are they capable of moving up past it, or are they going to be dragged into a battle with Sligo and Cork? And they showed with a comfortable enough win. That's comfortable wins against Cork and Sligo. So Graham Kelly will have to be extremely happy with that. Another opportunity to pick up a big 3 points again this week. And they're sort of looking up rather than looking down. The Bows defeat is sort of in the rear view mirror, and they're sort of thinking now, how many points can we pick up? Like the biggest thing for last year from a DLR point of view was consistency. Like no disrespect them, but they lost half their team. Didn't expect anything really from them, considering what they had to bring in, and like they've started the season quite well. The result against Athlone like sort of showed that they are still capable in games, and like Graham will have to be very, very happy. 3-0 win, another clean sheet. What more can you ask for from a DLR point of view? They're still a little bit under the radar. Everybody else is talking about other teams, and they'll just continue to plod along. If they can pick up the 3 points at the weekend, like that'll be them already on the 10 points already, and like that'll be a really, really positive start for them.
Talking about Steve Feeney's point of view, 5 games in, 0 points on the league table. They seem to have this problem of conceding late in the last maybe 20, 30 minutes of games, or even later, like we saw against Shamrock Rovers in the opening day. It's worrying for Sligo, I think, at this point.
Absolutely. If you're Sligo Rovers and Steve Feeney, you'd be extremely concerned at the minute. Like you brought in the likes of Casey Howe to give Emma Doherty a bit of support, but you only scored 3 goals in five games, conceded 14. As you say, a lot of them come with second half goals. You look at the equalise against Wexford in Ferry Carrick Park, and then get stuck later on with a couple of goals, and it's sort of like it's one of them that I think it's fair to say the morale might be a bit low because of the fact of the way the results have gone. The Treaty loss was probably a game that they targeted to get their first win of the season, and then losing that, you started thinking this is going to be difficult, and it's hard at the minute to see where they're going to pick up points. That's the biggest problem, and like realistically, yes, you can see Cork are showing some sparks at times. The fact that they lost by a goal to Peamount, the last minute goal that they lost against Galway, they're showing some bits of capability, whereas from Sligo Rovers, they're not showing us anything to show that they can potentially turn it around at the minute. They may need to change something to do it, whether it be system, personnel, just on the pitch to try and freshen things up a little bit, but you worry for them at the moment.
Well, the next month is fairly big for them. They've got 4 reasonably competitive games in terms of Cork, Athlone, Bohemians, and I think then a trip to Cork midway through May. Like, looking at that on paper, none of those teams, maybe bar Athlone, were in the shake-up for the title last year. So there's 4 games they should be targeting. What would constitute success in those games? Would 1 win? Would 4 points? 2 wins?
Yeah. The problem is I can't see them getting a result against Athlone, or I can't see them getting a result against Bows. That's the problem at the minute. Whereas the Cork game, it'll be difficult for them to get a result. But the Cork game is where they really have to 4 points. If you got 4 points from that, you'd probably say, yeah, that's a happy 6 points. Would be 6 points or more would be brilliant. But anything less than 3-4 points, you'd start to worry that they're going to get cut apart and drift away from the rest. 3
of those games are away, by the way. The only home game of those 4 is the Athlone game at the end of the month, next Saturday week. So it's potentially an opportunity for the other teams really to push away from them at the bottom of the table. And you would be worried that if they don't find a win somewhere, it could be a really long season.
Like the thing is, we don't want Sligo to be cut away. That's the biggest thing, and we're not trying to be negative here and say, listen, Sligo get cut away. That's the last thing we want for the league. We want to see them as competitive as possible, but unfortunately, it's just not really happening for them at the moment. And like it's a long time on even till the transfer window opens, because the window doesn't open until after till the World Cup is on. And at that stage, we'll have already had 13 rounds of fixtures. Yes, they would have probably played 12 games with one boy if their second boy isn't until after. But like that's a lot of games to be playing until the window is open. And how do you change things when they're not going well? It's always difficult. And we've seen in this league that teams can be ruthless when other teams maybe are a step or 2 off.
Absolutely. I suppose that's all the games from last weekend covered on the show this week. Let's take a quick look at those results from around the grounds. Shells 1, Treaty United 0, DLR Waves 3, Sligo Rovers 0, Galway United, Shamrock Rovers a 1-1 draw, Peamount with that 2-1 victory down in Turner's Cross against Cork City, while Athlone, as we spoke to Dana at length about, 3-1 win for them against Wexford Youths down in Ferry Carrick Park, live on TG Car last weekend. The league table looks something along the lines of this: Peamount United top of the table, 15 points from their 6 games, Shells 2 points back, Shamrock Rovers 2 points further back with that game in hand, while Galway United 10 points from their opening 6 games, Bows on 9, while Athlone and DLR level pegging on 7 points each, Wexford Youths on 6 points, albeit with just 4 games played, so a couple of games in hand for those for that side as well. And Stephen Quinn will be hoping to pick up a couple of points this weekend to make up for that. And then Treaty, Cork, and Sligo towards the foot of the table with 4 points, 1 point, and 0 points, as we've mentioned, respectively. There, Treaty and Cork with, I suppose, big results, big games this weekend. I suppose you'd find it hard to back any of those 3 teams to win this weekend. Sligo, they face a trip to Galway. DLR are the visitors to Marketsfield for Treaty United, and Cork City make the journey to Athlone to play them. So tough task for each of them this week. We'll talk about each individual fixture in just a couple of moments, but before we do, let's get on to the top scorers. Kate Mooney, 2 goals at the weekend. She puts herself top of the table. We have Jessie Stapleton on 4. We believe the FAI may have taken one of the, what do they call it, the contentious goals?
We just need to find out which one.
Yeah, we're not quite sure. It was all a bit of a mess that day in Dailyman. So she did crop up with a couple of goals, but she's definitely 3. We have her down as 4. Megan Smith-Lynch, this month's player of the month as well. We'll talk about that in a moment. 4 goals for her, while LOIWomen, Maddie Gibson, Jamie Thompson, and Dana Scheriff.
Do you know what? It's great to see the American flag flying so high with the 2 girls from Athlone there. Speaking to Dana, I just think even if you can get them 2 onto the pitch, I know Dana said they're quite similar players, but if you can get them 2 onto the pitch, they could really cause a lot of trouble for teams this year and could potentially skyrocket up that table as the season goes on.
Absolutely. Well, if you like the foreign flags there, you're going to like them here as well. There's a Canadian one in there. Niall Peterkin of Athlone Town. She's got 1 clean sheet in her 3 games so far. But Courtney Maguire, Eve Badana, and Rachel Kelly all on top of this particular table. 3 shutouts so far for them. Niamh Burke with 2, and then a scatter of players on 1. Amanda Budden, Maeve Williams, Abigail Renane, Niall Peterkin, Ciara Glacken, and Niamh Coombs. Surprising there, maybe Amanda Budden with the team she's got in front of her. Maybe a bit of a surprise that there's not more clean sheets in her column.
Yes and no. Problem with Rovers at the minute is they're quite open in the middle, so they've got a lot of inexperience in the middle. So it's been quite difficult for them. Yes, they've conceded go up top that they can score goals, but they've also been conceding some goals as well that maybe with a bit more experience there, they may have been preventable. Like you look at the Maeve Russell one where she scores from 35 yards out on the touchline. No one closed that down. She just has a cross come shot. She'll probably say it was a shot, but it's definitely a cross and loops over Amanda Budden. It's one of them that, like, it's tough to say how many Amanda will get this year. I think it shows last year she had a really, really, really good defence with Shelbourne behind her to how many she did get. Whereas I think from a point of view, I'd expect if she gets out of 20 games, if she gets 7 or 8, I think she's done very well. I'd expect probably Niamh Burke to continue to run away with this, providing that she remains in goal for Peamount for the entire season.
Yeah, of course, 1 clean sheet as well. If we bring it back up there, 1 clean sheet for Niamh Coombs at the bottom of that list for that 1 game that she did play. So 4 clubs with 3 shutouts so far. Athlone as well, obviously across 2 goalkeepers, have 2 clean sheets. So plenty of talking points there in terms of the goalkeepers across the league. Fixtures for this weekend, let's take a quick look at these games. So we've got Galway United and Sligo Rovers, 2 o'clock in AMDC Park. Then, of course, the Connacht Derby. Treaty United versus DLR Waves in the Marketsfield, kickoff at 5 p.m. Wexford Youths make the journey to Peamount United to play at 5 p.m. While I suppose the traditional men's Dublin Derby, I know we'll get hammered for that, we do every time, but it is the kind of the recognised Dublin Derby, Shamrock Rovers versus Bohemians. That's in Tallaght Stadium at 5:30, and it's the first time the Bows girls will travel there in competition. Could be an interesting one. We'll talk about it in a moment or two as Cork City in the final game of the season of the weekend, 7 p.m. kickoff in Athlone Town Stadium, and they play Dana Scheriff's side. Dana Scheriff's side. Apologies, Dana. They play at the
Sheriff will shoot you for that.
Yeah, I said I wasn't doing puns. We said off air we weren't doing puns. I'm staying away from the dad jokes today. There's some interesting games there. I think for me, Bows travelling to Tallaght, because of everything that's associated with the 2 clubs, it's going to have that little bit of spice to it. Yes, they mightn't be title contenders both in isolation, but it does have that kind of, I suppose, mystique to it that the fixture has brought us over the years on the men's side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you'd be interested to know how many Bows men's fans will come, how many Rovers men's fans will come, just because the fact that it's Bows and Rovers. Like, it's definitely got a lot of uniqueness to it. Like, it's interesting when you see Shells play Bows over the recent years. It's always been a great atmosphere at the games. There's never been anything to worry about. Things have just gone on. Whereas Bows and Rovers, you hate to say it, but you'd always have that small concern in the back of your mind. You hope everything passes, and the football on the field is what we're talking about next week. For me, the game itself, from a Bows point of view, if Bows is to get anything out of the game, they have to be the best Bows possible. If Bows come into this game at about 80%, 70%, they've no chance of getting a result in this game. I think they have to be at 100% to take anything out of Rovers. Like, you'd expect, Rovers are obviously going to be a massive threat. Like, the only thing from a Rovers point of view is Abby Larkin not really scoring goals. Maybe they're relying now a little bit more on other players to come in. Jamie Thompson from midfield has sort of been the one to step up and with the 4 goals this season. Whereas, from a Bows point of view, they haven't scored a lot of goals in their games. They've only scored 5 goals. Yes, they've conceded 4, but it's one that it could either go either way. If Rovers click and Rovers are on form, Rovers could score a couple. If Bows are if they're not and Bows are 100%, Bows could get something from the game. Ideally, from a Rovers point of view, if they really want to win the league, this is the sort of game that they have to be winning, and they can't afford to drop points again off the back of the Galway result last week.
I think it remains to be said, though, that Shamrock Rovers are the only team that nobody has beaten this year. Mm-hmm. Still the only unbeaten side. They might not be top of the table, but no one's actually found that. Now, Sligo came pretty close on the opening day of the season, and in terms of getting a result against them. But do Bows have that little bit of ingenuity up front to unlock that Rovers defence?
Not necessarily up front, but I think in midfield they could definitely have a better presence than them, with the likes of Ciara Bates-Crosby, Rachel Doyle and Fiona Donnelly in midfield. Yes, up top it's difficult, but Erica Burke's probably been a bit isolated this season. But I think realistically, is it going to come from up top? Maybe not. It might have to come from midfield. Whereas from a Rovers point of view, yes, they are scoring goals, but the 2 relying for me at the moment on Jamie Thompson and the performances that she's putting in. Whereas I'd like to see the likes of Larkin stepping up a little bit more, some of the other players stepping up a little bit more, and maybe taking that bit of pressure off Jamie, because it's like if Jamie doesn't play well, Rovers don't play well. That's what it seems to be the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, she did come up with trumps. Mind you, it was a good piece of work in the build-up from Owen O'Gorman as well. You can't beat the old heads either in terms of the experience they bring to it. And it allows those youngsters around those players to really kind of grow into the league.
I think Anya has been good this season. I think Anya has been good. Like, you look at the goal she scored against Wexford, it was just a run that she made, and she never stopped running all night. That was the biggest thing to take away from the Wexford game, that Anya just kept going and going and going. And I think, listen, Anya will always give you everything she has, no matter what the situation is. So you expect nothing more than a 7, 8 out of 10 performance every week from Anya. Like, whereas some of the other players probably haven't hit the strides that they would have wanted, and that's probably where they haven't won all the games, where they've dropped points in games. But you're right in what you said, though. Nobody's beating them. That's the biggest thing. Nobody's beating them. Galway got a draw. Like, Shells have got a draw. Nobody else is taking points off them yet.
In terms of the weekend's fixtures, where will you be yourself?
I'm going to go to Peamount. I'm going to go to Peamount Wexford. I think there's a lot in that game in terms of the Peamount. If they win, they keep the train going. If they don't, Wexford could come back into it a little bit. Like, I think that's the game that I'm most looking forward to this weekend, and I think it'll be an enthralling game. Last year, remember when Wexford went up there on a Friday night, they were hammered out the door, and then the 3-3 draw the second last day of the season. So the games between the sides have always been exciting, and I expect nothing more again the weekend.
Yeah, well, it's a busy weekend of action again in the League of Ireland Women's Premier Division. Of course, we're well used to that at this stage. It's going to be an absolutely exciting weekend. Wherever you happen to be taking in a game, do let us know, maybe on social media, where you're heading for this weekend. We'd love to hear from you. But as it is, I'm Breifne Earley for this week. It's been an action-packed show. We had Dana Scheriff on earlier. She's looking forward to hosting Cork City at the weekend with her Athlone town side. But for everyone else, I'm sure they'll be super excited about whatever games are coming up on their roster this weekend. Aaron, once again, it's been a pleasure. Before we wrap up, anything you want to get off your chest? I know you like to throw in a couple of.
No, the only thing I will say is delighted to see Megan Smith-Lynchman in Player of the Month. I think she's been brilliant this month. Yes, I know a lot of people are saying Jamie Thompson was been good, but she has. Jessie Stapleton's been good. But for me, I was delighted to see Megan win. I just think she's been superb for them. And now I'm just looking forward to this weekend. Everything remains positive. Everything remains good. And, I'm looking forward to seeing who throws the spanner in the works this weekend and makes us talk where we're surprised next week.
Yeah, there's always one, so we wonder who it'll be this week. We'll find out on Saturday evening. Wherever you're going to be for a game, enjoy your week. We'll talk to you again next week.